Hello my friends, we have a beautiful day today, and even if it's raining outside, every day when we can work on our model is great, right? Today I will paint a motorcycle and figures. It may not be my favorite stage of work, but if we are doing a diorama, the figures are necessary to add some human factor and make the whole scene have some dynamism, less or more. I personally like dynamic scenes, but sometimes, like here, calm, even relaxing, it can also be an interesting composition. Okay, the motorcycle has been attached to toothpicks and I have already cleaned it with the degreaser. I have already talked about the advantages of this product on the occasion of King Tiger, so I won't repeat myself. The most important thing is that the model is ready for painting in a very short time. I use dark grey from AK Real Colors as the base color. Because the paint is used for the first time, I throw a metal ball into it to make it easier to mix. And I use my paint mixer that does the job perfectly. The figure is permanently mounted to the motorcycle, so I won't care that I paint the whole thing. Of course, my primary goal is the motorcycle. Since I found the color far too dark, I decided to add a little light shade to make the surface brighter. Well, this is the main problem of these paints, that they are quite pigmented and have dark shades. They are easy to paint, I really like to use them, but I always have in mind that they need to brighten to make them look the way I like on the model. Of course, this is a matter of individual taste, so take what I say as my private opinion. Probably the producer, which is AK, did the best they could and reproduced the colors, but for me it's just like I said before. It doesn't change the fact that I recommend them for painting. Okay, I am painting now, but you can see the airbrush because it's out of the frame. It looks a bit strange, but the painting is in progress. And now you can see a big difference in brightness and colors. The figure shows the first shade and the elements of the motorcycle are painted with a lighter mixture. For me, I like this brighter, bluer color more. And you have to remember that after weathering the color will change even more, it will be darker. Now the detail painting. First, the tires. Of course they are very dark grey because the rubber looks much better in this shade than when it's painted black. But black is on the seats, but you won't be able to see them too much. The seat in the sidecar and the exhaust pipes are brown. All the elements that in a real motorcycle are silver or have such shade, I painted a mixture of silver and light grey. Then I also made a fine silver filter. Generally, painting all these details is uncomfortable work because on the one hand they are very small elements and on the other hand access to them is quite difficult and you have to be careful not to touch the already painted elements with the brush. Of course, all the time I try to follow the pictures of original or restored motorcycles. I used the decals from the set for my motorbike, even though there are no SS registration plates. Let's say that the moto was transferred from other unit and no one took care of changing the numbers. As far as I know, it was not uncommon and happened in the German army, especially at the end of the war when the equipment was more important than its numbers. In addition to the license plates, I also used the Zundapp logo and the clock that is located in the front lamp. Additionally, I added the tire pressure markings on the fenders. From my collection I took dry decals from Archer and applied the Totenkopf division markings on the sidecar basket and on the tray. And so the entire motorcycle was prepared for the next stages. With the set of figures I also have a few small things to put on the motorcycle. These include winter gloves that are designed to be attached to the fuel cap. I painted them in autumn camo, although they will be covered with a map. Okay, now it's time to take care of the driver. First I painted his pants to be in white camo. The first layer was light grey. After drying I applied white, but it's ivory, truly speaking. Pure white makes the highlights. After pre-coloring the pants, I decided to put the whole set together. I glued the sidecar and added additional fixings. After they were painted I started to wash. This definitely improved the 3D appearance of the whole model. The excess of the wash was wiped off with a clean thinner. And finally I dried it with an accelerator. The next step was to apply dust-colored weathering paint. I used exactly the same order and products as for King Tiger. 2 layers of dust are sufficient as a base for applying mud. You have to be careful here and apply small amounts because it's very easy to overdo it and clog the model. I focused mainly on the wheels and more specifically on the tires and on the lower parts of the model. Generally, doing weathering on the motorcycle is quite a difficult matter and you have to be careful not to destroy your previous work. As I mentioned earlier, this is due to the size of the model and its shapes. In addition, it's easy to cover small elements with too much mud, so everything has to be applied in a minimum amount and controlled all the time. It doesn't change the fact that motorcycles are a great addition to dioramas, but also to vehicles as their luggage or storage. So whenever possible I buy motorcycle models to list them in my collection because you never know when they can be useful. And as the market shows, some models are currently very difficult to obtain and very expensive, so there is no need to delay your shopping. Okay, now the figures. As I said before, this is not my strongest point and I don't want to make myself a great specialist in this matter. I paint figures at a sufficient level and I'm aware of that. They are an addition to vehicles for me and I treat them that way. Of course, it doesn't mean that I don't work hard, but I'm far from the level of other modelers. Nevertheless, I try to do it well and enrich the figures with various accessories. For the figures in this project I added dry archer decals. In the meantime I added a few details to the motorcycle and the whole thing is ready. Ropes, additional tires, some tarps enhance the overall appearance of the model. It looks even better with the crew and I'm happy with the result. From the technical side, it's worth mentioning that the rope is soaked with PVA glue to stick small hairs sticking out of it. Of course, later it will be painted with acrylic paints. The tarps are made of green stuff and paper. I fastened them with a paper strip which was soaked in a CA glue to harden. This caused the painting is much easier. Earlier I forgot about it, but luckily I found in the box a set of weapons for the motorcycle and more precisely the MG34. I decided to make a small modifications and add a metal barrel and a dozen metal parts from Aber. It wasn't the easiest job and I won't pretend that it went without problems, because I had to work a little to make everything complete. Such small parts require a lot of concentration and you have to make an effort to put it all together. Fortunately, the glasses on my nose helped me with that, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it. The final effect looks really great and it was worth spending the time upgrading this element. Before painting it, I cover it with a thin coat of metal primer. It's worth doing it because elements such as weapons are wiped off later to obtain a metallic shine, so in order not to risk the paint rubbing off, a good primer must appear there. The whole thing was covered with AK primer and then dried with an accelerator. I used a mixture of black and metallic grey for painting, which didn't work as I expected. I rubbed the whole element with gunmetal pigment and then mounted it on the motorcycle. The positioning of the MG was a bit limited by the figures, so I didn't have much room for maneuver. I painted the figures with my favorite acrylic Vallejo and AK 3G paints. Additionally, I also used the Modeler's World wash, which for figure painters is probably blasphemy, but the end result is okay for me. A little old-fashioned dry brushing, the archer stickers, metallic pencil rubs on the gun, and they are ready. Now it was left to set the King Tiger crew to the model. They are well prepared so that everything fits, but still there is a little bit of stress that something will go wrong. Luckily all three figures fit perfectly and were stuck on with a little amount of glue. Of course it would be better to put gloves on. And we got to the end. That's all I wanted to show you in this episode. Maybe it's not as spectacular as painting a tank, but if we are doing a diorama, each element is worth attention. As you can see, this is how it will look like on the base, more or less. In the next episode I will paint the building, the ground and add some small details. Now it's a good time to mention my patrons who joined the coldemonspl team. Thank you guys so much. If you also want to be my patron, check what benefits you can have when you support me. You can find the link in the description and at the end of this video. Don't waste your time and join the team. If something isn't clear, please don't hesitate to ask me in the comments below, because if you look at my past videos you realize I respond to 100% of all the questions and comments in there. The only thing I ask is that if you like this video, if you learned something from it and if you enjoyed watching it, please just hit that red subscribe button and that little bell in the corner right now. It will help me to make more content just like this. You know what I'm talking about. That's all for today. See you next time. Cheers!